Okay, we're going to wrap up Chapter 3, and so the next thing I'm going to talk about, again, talking about the percent formatting, and we have, if you look on page 172, there you'll see a percent 10s. So now we've seen dot slash d, the percent d, the percent f being the float or decimal double type, and then we had the percent d, which is the integer type, and then we now have the s, which is a string data type. So again, the 10 says that's how many characters it's going to take up. That's the minimum. So if there's only 5, it will front face or front fill with spaces. So in this case here, we got name 1, name 2, name 3, name 4, name 5, name 6, and here we basically have the format, comma, name 1, name 2, so those two names will basically be filled with the first S and the second S, so on and so forth. And again, we can see how they are automatically formatted here in the example here at the bottom of that page. And again, they're all right, they default to right aligned. Now if we want to make something left aligned, what we could do is, so we've seen a comma for comma thousand separator. We have seen the oh gosh, I forgot what that was. But anyways, the comma, and now we are going to use the dash, which is the left justified. So it's going to make everything left justified as opposed to right justified. So here we see a dash 10, and when it basically prints out, we're going to see everything left aligned. Okay, so which is basically the proper way for strings to basically be formatted. We could do the same thing with numeric values as well. So we basically covered the percent formatting, and we can then continue on to the decimal format class. Now we're going to kind of touch on a little bit of object-oriented here when we start talking about classes and importing this class into our code. When we get into the advanced Java class, the very first chapter we'll cover is chapter 6, and we will cover object-oriented pretty intensively. So the first thing that it talks about, the very first thing we need to do is we need to import this particular API into our code. And again, it brings in the proper data from the jars and from the different settings and different things. It's brought in and allows us access to this class, which is called the decimal format class. Now one way to use it is to just go ahead and declare it, and then it will basically give that helper that will say, hey, in order to use this, you really need to include the decimal format API. It will actually bring it in your folder automatically. But so we bring that in, and then down here, now this is how we can create an object from a class. So in this case, we have what's called the decimal format. That's the decimal format class. And then I'm creating an object from that class. I can't use a class directly. I have to create an object from it. So in this case, I'm creating a object. I'm going to call it formatter. Now this can be any name you want to give it. We don't have to use the word formatter. We can come up with any name we want. So in this case, we're using formatter as our name. And now it's going to be equal to, now you notice we have the word new. New says I'm going to instantiate this. That means I'm going to create a brand new object. And any initializations that need to be brought in for that particular object are going to automatically be there because of that new instantiation. And what kind of a new is it going to be? We're going to create a new decimal format. Now, what we have inside of here, and again, this is more along the object-oriented chapter of chapter 6, this is going to be our constant. So this is basically what the default we are going to set our decimal formatting at. Notice I've got pound sign and I've got 0.00. Pound signs are optional. They're basically just placeholders. A 0 says I'm going to be displayed as a 0 unless there's a numeric value that will basically be put in my place. So if I have a .22, this guy, the pound sign is optional, but the 0 will display if there's not a numeric value in there. So .22, it will display as 0.22. So we can put in leading zeros wherever we need to. So so again, I talked about the decimal formatter and then the new decimal format, and basically what it is. So again, we are instantiating a new decimal format class, and we are calling it formatter. Now to use this new object within our code, here's how we do it. So here I have decimal format, formatter. Here's my new object I'm creating, and it's going to be instantiated from the decimal format. And this is the parameter that I'm going to pass to it, which is a constant. Again, constant means nothing to us right now until we get to chapter 6. So down here, I basically am using my J option pane, which is going to display a dialog box, and there it says null. So here we have a show message dialog. Null, comma, formatter. So here's my format. Where did this .format come from? Well, those are methods that are built into the decimal format class. They're already, think of it as a code that's already been written for us. It already has methods, it already has properties, it already has fields, it already has all of that in place, and basically we now have access to use them. So in this case, we have a decimal format, and then we're going to pass it that comma 0.00, and we basically talked about that. So now it's going to pass in these three numbers into the decimal format, and since I have a 0 and a leading 0, the first one that came in was 0.166666. We said we're only going to have 2 decimal places, and it's going to have 0.17. The next one, see how long that is 1.67, 16.67, and so on and so forth. So we kind of get an idea for what is going on there. So let's go ahead and take a look at an example. In this case, let's take a look at format 1 first. So here's format 1. Again, here is what we just looked at. And again, if we were to run this, we would see the same results as we saw in the example in the book. Zero 0.17, 1.67, and 16.67. Okay. Now if we take a look at format 2, so here's format 2, same numbers coming in, except this time everything's the same except for what we pass in for our parameter for the decimal format. This time I've got 00.00. Now I don't have a pound sign. Again, the pound sign is a placeholder. It's going to print or it's not going to print. In this case, 0.00. So let's see what basically gets displayed in that particular. Whoop. So in this case, yeah. In this case, it's 00.17, 01.67, 16.67, and 166.67. So what happened there is the 2 00s says I'm just going to have two leading zeros in front of the. So if there are no decimal places in front of the decimal place, it will display 2 zeros at least. If we take a look at format number 3, again everything kind of being the same, except now I'm using our pound signs and I've got a comma in there. So now think of our comma thousand separator. In this case I'm saying if there is a numeric value to go in that place, display it with a comma, and again those two are optional, but the 0 will print if there is no numeric value in there. So if we run this guy, 123.90, 1 comma 233.90, 12,345.90, and 123 comma 456.0, and again then we get into the millions. Okay, so there we can format our decimals any way we want. Now again, that could be all pound signs in there. So we don't have to. So however you want to format your numbers. Now, if I think you should always have .00, so that way all of your numeric values will have .00. So that way they're automatically aligned by the decimal place. And lastly, let's talk about the last one. So there we have pound 0%. Now we've added a percent inside of the decimal format. And what that says is make this a percent, not a numeric value per se, but a percent numeric value. So here I've got 0.12, 0.05, and it's going to display at least one character. If not, it's going to have a 0. So if we were to run this, so 0.12 becomes 12%. So it moves the decimal place to the left, to the right 2 places, and 5%. Okay, so takes a decimal to converts it to a percent by moving the decimal to the right 2 places. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up the chapter. Some of the common errors in the back of the book on page 181. Again, it talks about using the equal sign as opposed to the equal. Again, when we're dealing with strings, we always want to make sure we at least have the equal. So the equal is kind of a way for us to compare 2 variables together. Make sure we enclose the if statement in parentheses. We always have to make sure it has parentheses inside there. Make sure we put a semicolon at the end of a clause. If we're going to enclose multiple conditional execution statements in braces, make sure we have the same number of braces. If we've got an open brace, we've got to have a closing brace. Omitting the trailing else of an if-else statement. What that basically will happen. So if I have an if statement, then an else if. If all those are false and I don't have an else statement, it's not going to do anything. So kind of what they're saying there is if you're going to have an else if, make sure you at least have a way for it to, if none of those are true, have something within that statement. Again, making sure we have proper Boolean arguments within the and, the ampersand, which is the and the pipe, which is the or. And I think you can kind of read the rest on your own. Again, homework assignment is on page I believe it's page 191, bank charges. So again, any questions, make sure you give me a call, email me, or basically text me, however you basically need to get a hold of me, or you can use the forum to ask questions. I try to check that about every other day if I don't get to it every day. So again, any questions, give me a call. Contact me. See ya.